Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to the Hollis Chapman Show on Blog Talk Radio. Happy Friday to you. I think today we can call it kind of Reflection Friday. Today is the day before the 20th anniversary of what happened September 11th. So we're kind of reflecting on that. And so our special guest today, he's all about reflecting. He's all about life change. It's for the better. Our special guest graduated from college and experienced a season of inward turmoil. Okay, so things happen in all of our lives. We can reflect on it. We can improve on it. We can get better at it. Our special guest philosophy: promote will never be of my own creation. Okay, let me say that again. What he promote will never be of his own creation. A montage of internet conspiracies or false prophecies. He's a deep person. He's a poet, a very highly educated person. He's here to talk about his books. He's written plenty. You know, my main question is, how do you start writing poetry? Is it something in the family? Is it something that's kind of God-given? Let's welcome to the show our special guest, Mr. Linwood Jackson Jr.
Thank you for having me. Thank you. Thank you for having me. Can I get right into that question that you just asked?
Oh, yes, sir. Go ahead.
Absolutely a brilliant question. The beginning of poetry it begins with the non-knowing of self. That's the only way I can put it. That's the beginning of poetry for me, is the non-knowing of self. To my earliest time, 7 years old is when I started writing poetry. And at that time, I realized that the educational institution that I was in, even at a young age, wasn't capturing me. And then my home life wasn't actually fulfilling me. And so not really knowing what's right for me, I took out all of my frustrations in the form of poetry. Didn't know it was poetry, didn't know what it was, but the more that I developed the craft, the more that I began to realize I was doing something kind of different. And then I began to branch out to different minds out there that also did the same. As the years went by, I began to just admire Alice Walker, for example, the poet, and her delivery and the way that she electrifies you with the most subtle things. And I carry that with me into my writing, whether it's poetry or any sort of philosophical type or research-based writing. Just the sharpness of it just lets me, it was a way of expressing self when there was no self to express. That's the only way I can describe poetry and its essence of where it comes from. To know and to want to know self above any and everything else for the sake of sanity.
That's wonderful. Well said and expressed. Before we continue, I want you to do this for us. I want you to introduce yourself. I want you to tell us a little bit more about yourself. And then I want you to tell us a little bit about your newest book. Okay, so we kind of jumped the gun. That's my fault. But we want to go back. Yeah, we want to go back now and kind of introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about yourself and your new book.
Junior, I am a writer on the health that's within the Bible's words, the philosophy, the mental and inward well-being that is within the Bible's words. This is what I write about. This is what I capture in my poetry or any sort of philosophical research type-based writing. And my latest book, called Justification. Justification is a book focusing just on this very topic. But the book, Perfecting and Reforming Personal Religion, was actually my very first publication. And it was just a variety of counsel that the Bible presents for us to get familiar with ourselves and also the life that we are living. Each and every single one of us, we can't say that we live the same life because we don't. or life is held to our mind, and the lens that is within our mind, what we project, that is what we bring in, and that is also what we give out. And so this book, Perfecting and Reforming Personal Religion, is a book of counsel and advice of how you can practice getting more familiar with yourself, both personally and devotionally, and while also regulating the routine that is you as a devotional being and also as a personal human being. My latest book, Justification, digs further into that subject by getting to the root of just how to do that, and the subject of faith, the science of faith, and also the science of knowledge, how you can't really have faith without a knowing, and you can't really know anything without having faith or having a hope of what to know. And so that sort of dichotomy, that relationship, is within that my latest book, Justification, also found in Perfecting and Reforming Personal Religion.
Thank you for sharing that. Listen to you speak. You're so articulate. You put your words together so well. Now, go back to, you said 7 years old, you started being a poet. Back in our day, I remember I being 7, 8, 9 years old. I always went to sports. Sports was my outlet. Sports was my way to deal with stuff like that. Now, how did you deal with being, probably were a loner, because you're a young man, and you go into sports, you poetry and writing. How did you get the strength to continue that? Because again, it's definitely done you well by doing it. But how did you get the strength to stay maybe by yourself, but knowing that you're doing some great things?
Well, as an athlete, I'm sure you can relate to this. You step on, whether you're a football player, you step on the field. Whether you're a basketball player, you step on the court. Whether you are an MMA or mixed martial arts individual and you step into that squared circle, you're stepping into what I would like to call a sanctuary. So that is your sanctuary. And you brought up a good point of being a loner and being alone and the motivation that's needed. But when you step into that sanctuary, because I did also, to my late teens, I did Taekwondo and I got my black belt. So I understand the combat relation to poetry and to everything else, is that is your sanctuary. And that sanctuary is a place where you can go where nobody else exists. And you leave that sanctuary knowing that there are then people that do exist. And that's the same as me in poetry. I go into that zone of poetry, and that writing zone, that writing realm, that is my sanctuary. And the reason that I can maintain that is because of the fullness and also the mental exercising that I get from that. Same way in sports. That's why it's that sanctuary. It's a sanctuary because you're exercising the frustration. You're not only simply exercising the frustration, you're exercising not just your body, but you're also exercising the you within. So you're growing closer to yourself by pushing yourself. And that's actually a feeling of alleviation because the mind is healing while you're doing all of that. And so being a writer, you're in that same zone, except you're not using your physical body. The organ is your mind, and inside of that mind is an imagination. Just as even if you're an athlete, you're imagining yourself ascending heights physically, but as a writer, you're ascending heights mentally, and you're putting those mental heights into words to understand what you can't really place into words, to let that darkness shine as a light. So the darkness becomes that light, and that's what keeps me going, is the translation of what is dark within into something that is light and that is productive, and that once it is out there in the public, somebody else can go, I'm going through that too, and then it becomes their light too, and then they have an inspiration to discover or define the light within themselves, and then it just carries on from that person to the next, to the next, to the next. So that's what keeps me going, the mental alleviation, and also the fact that I can inspire from my own joy and sorrow that I'm going through my pen.
Listeners, I want you to understand and listen to him when he says he really attacks the mental part of writing and what it goes through. But also, if you read his stuff, his books uses the analogy of physical food and health to counsel spiritual dietary remedies. So now he's not only doing the mental part of it, but he knows you got to have the right food to nutrition you to do things too. So talk about that, your spiritual health. Kind of combine the analogies with God, spiritual, how important it is to have that spiritual food and health.
Of course, because or despite what we may think, we're really not physical beings. We only have a body for the sake of our brain, and we only have a brain for the sake of our mind. The mind is really there just to experience, but the body is there to make the experience more full. So, in essence, we really are inward, mental, philosophical type beings, and that really has to be fed. The issue is that we're feeding these things, and especially now at this time, we're feeding the you or the us that is within with physical things. So we're physically turning to things that we think can heal us or that can help make us better, but they become a deterrent for us progressing as a human being. So we're taking physical distractions and we're using them to replace the mental alleviation that we should be discovering. But or we don't work that way. The more physical distractions that we have, our life sucks. And our life will continue to suck because we're using physical distractions to mentally feed ourselves. The mental aspects of this being that we are is that we have to claim who we are, not personally, because we are personal human beings. But beyond that, we are also devotional or spiritual or philosophical beings. I can say this because emotion isn't physical. Emotion is you can't see emotion, but you can feel it. The fact that you can feel emotion lets you know that you're not just a collection of chemicals and whatnot through a process of theoretical evolutionary development. You are beyond physical. And an example is the fact that we can carry and also give and portray and send emotion to one another. So connecting to that philosophical, spiritual side of us, it's the number one thing that's crucial for us as human beings so that our physical body can then develop a sense of awareness of its own, that we can then realize, wow, this is healthy for my body because my mind isn't healthy when I do this. Or this isn't healthy for me in my life, depending on where you are, who you're with in a relationship, where you're working, who's a part of your family that does this, who is a friend or whatever it may be to disrupt the energy that is us. We won't be able to cut ourselves off from that negativity unless our mind is personally and devotionally well. And that's the number one thing to a safe being, which is something that's not easy because some of us have 20 years, 30, 40, 50, 60 years in habits that have been, physically inducing to us and have been stopping us from being the person that we are supposed to be, not just to ourselves, but to our family, to be better parents, to be a better husband, to be a better cousin, to be a better sister or brother. The diet that our mind must take in is a diet of solitary. You have to go through that solitary confinement because you have to be able to look you in your face. I've searched, when I went through a period of time, there was no philosophy on this planet that suited what I needed as a human being and as a creature of the living God. And I turned to the Bible as saying, if you are real, be real. And what I learned in the words when I reviewed the language and the context of the language was a philosophy and was a wisdom of being that taught the diet of the mind is crucial in order for the government of the body. I'll just give a brief example, is that the issue of meat eating in the Bible is there. And the issue of meat eating, when you break down the language and the context, is that meat translates to, and again, not taking away the diet of anybody who may need to eat meat or may not eat meat. This is strictly philosophical that the Bible is speaking of. The Bible being a book of illustration, the use of the language isn't necessarily 100% real. It's analogical. And the use of meat in the Bible translates to a use of what is within the heart, doctrinally or philosophically. The attachments we have in this natural realm, they become sources of meat and sources of idols that we use to then feed our ego or feed our I, and that distracts us from the you. So while the I is being fed, the you is being shriveled up and discarded because that I is becoming so pronounced from the meat or the idols that we take. Counsel in the Bible is to remove self from that meat, remove self from that idol, and then you will discover the you, because that I will begin to shrink and the you will then nurture both the I and the you itself. So the translation of the physical diet into the devotional or the philosophical benefits, because when you do take that step to get that meat out of your life mentally, you can then look at your physical diet, and then you can then think, if this is not good for my perception, well, what then is good for my physical body, for the perception of my physical body? And then that's how a sort of holistic transformation can take place, both mentally and physically.
Our special guest today is Linwood Jackson Jr. Hey, Linwood, before we get to the next question, I want you to tell us, where do we go after this show to get your beautiful books, to follow up on you, and to read more about you? Where do we go after the show?
You can go to my website. You can go to linwoodjacksonjr.com, LINLINWOOD, linwoodjacksonjr.com, or you can go to Google. You could type in my name, any search engine. You can go to Google. You can go to Bing, type in Google Linwood Jackson Jr. I will pop up all of my books and everything related to me, articles or videos, and you can see me or contact me via my website even. But everything there is located for me on those search engines.
Outstanding. You know, you're very devoted to living God's spiritual understanding, very devoted to that. Now, I know a lot of us do not start praying to God until something bad happens to our lives. You know, that things go wrong, go in Afghanistan, something goes wrong here. A lot of stuff going on with, the Black Lives Matters and Me Too movement. All that kind of stuff goes on. We don't start praying until something goes wrong in our life. How do you, as a person who's devoted to your belief, how do you handle pushback? How do you stay strong enough to keep on going? Because, again, obviously speaking to you, you're not shy about your beliefs. But I know, and as you know, sometimes people get very offended by it, pushy about. So how do you handle that?
I handle that basically because it's like breathing. It's like asking me how am I breathing? It's become a way of life. It's going through, again, the mental struggle. You gain a confidence about what you're saying, and as with anything, again, I can go back to sports. The more you practice, the more proficient you get. Doesn't mean you're going to be 100% accurate, but you may be 85, 80, 75, 70, 65, 50, depending on how hard you work, and that's how I stay the way I am, despite the things that life can throw at me, because I do go through conflicts, and me being so open about the philosophical side of it, there are drawbacks in the secular and in the religious world when it comes to, for example, me speaking somewhere. And also life situations, relationships, and family, they also take a toll based on my own beliefs. And so the strength in that, I'm just saying that just so that you and your listeners can know that the life is the life, and it's a struggle to become more whole and more intact. And it's more than just saying I am this, and it's more than just believing I am this. It's actually going through it, the mental part of it, and exercising that muscle that we have absolutely no conscious awareness of when we're born. It's when you say, like you said, you go through something bad and then you pray to God. It's those times where it's not necessarily I'm going to pray. It's about I'm going to keep praying, and then above that, I'm going to keep knowing, and then above that, I'm going to keep exercising what I know, because we can only pray for so long. You can only pray for so long. You can only know for so long, but you can exercise forever, and then take a break from exercising and then keep the cycle going. So for me, everything that I've gone through, and plus everything that I've studied, everything that I've articulated to myself, it's built up a confidence in the reality of me being an imperfect learner, me being an imperfect human being, but me also understanding that imperfection is what makes me and everybody else beautiful, because no one is born to remain imperfect forever. The effort is there for us to be whole. And it's dependent upon our own faculties and the development of those faculties, what we will lend them to and what we will not lend them to, and how we will lend them, and in what ways we choose to allow others to lend their own to us and us to them, so that the process of this robotic living, not simply secularly, but also devotionally and religiously, that it can be broken, because you go into these things and you begin to think that you are religion. You begin to think that you are the secular person or the secular institution that you see on a daily basis. You don't realize that there is a you. If we spend our whole lives or supplying the I, that I is philosophically dissected. But the you, whether it's in secular philosophy or religious philosophy, that you is so far from being understood. And it can really only be understood through the living experience, above hearing and above whatever. It's that confidence that I have comes with doing. You can kind of care less about anything, because your reality is the doing, and the consistent doing for a consistent amount of knowledge to exercise. Whether you fail or whether you succeed, you keep going, and it's that confidence of knowing that no matter what, you will gain. There's no loss. You will gain.
Hey, Linwood, and I appreciate you using an analogy in sports. I'm a sports guy, so I can really appreciate that. But I got to be honest with you. Last night, I was praying like crazy, praying. That kicker for Tampa Bay missed the field goal. Dang it. I want to put a little fun into it. But, yes, thank you for that. Okay, so back to some serious stuff now. You write your books. Is there something that really comes over you when you say, okay, this is gonna be a book. This is gonna start writing that book, or you just plan it out knowing that you're gonna write your next book, then you're gonna write your next book. How does Linwood get the inspiration to start writing his books?
That's such a funny question, because the inspiration comes from my interactions with people that reach out to me. Mm-hmm. Or if I go somewhere and I hear somebody make a presentation about something, and then I go in my head, that's really not what that is supposed to be. That's not right. So then I hear a presentation or somebody reaches out to me, and that begins the process of dissecting, which ends up turning into a piece of writing. I really have no intention of it to being a piece of writing, but you get to a point where it's other minds need to see this, and this needs to be out in the public sphere, so that there can be a sort of dissection of it, so that it can progress the way that it needs to progress. Or if it won't progress, then it won't progress. But for me, the inspiration has been the people that reach out to me, and it's been interesting because the progression is slow, but everything that I have been putting out there, I have been getting a return of, this is needed, this is wanted, we need more help with this. And it's been very interesting. I never sit down and I never go, this is going to be a subject and this is what it's going to be and I'm going to stick to it. It's always based on the confusion that somebody else has. That's always been enlightening to me. Sort of like, this is what their issue is. And in my head, I go, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And then it just takes off from there.
Yeah, it's very powerful because you're like me, where my mind kind of never stops. I'm always kind of creating things. I'm always kind of like it. Sometimes it's bothersome because even when I go to sleep, I'm thinking, trying to create. So I don't get a full night's sleep because I'm constantly trying to think of the show. I'm thinking creating stuff for the blog, stuff like that. So I think the same thing with you. Your mind's going 100 miles an hour all the time. Is that true?
It goes. And the great thing is well, here's the interesting thing. The interesting thing is that being a researcher from the Bible's philosophy, not taking my thoughts and my opinions from traditional theological theories, I'm away from what is popular. I know nothing about what is current in the world of religion. I only know Bible. So when I do sit down and when I do open the Bible and when I do really get into it, it's not as if I'm giving the opinion of me. I'm researching the language and the context that's within the Bible, and I'm getting the opinion of the Bible. And that's really where I zone out. And I'm saying that because my thinking stops at that point. My thinking literally just stops, and I become so focused on that one thought. It's no longer just a multitude of things is just this one zone. And in this one zone, I will spend maybe 12 to 24 months on one subject. And what comes out from that are a different amount of pieces of writings that I eventually put together as books. And it's just so interesting because when I get out of that, and then that's when the thoughts continue. But being in that one zone, I feel very comfortable because I'm not reading and I'm not writing and I'm not analyzing my own opinions. These are opinions of authors that were written a very long time ago. And to research and to decode their language in the original language, putting it back into English, and to get their opinion of it, that stops all of my thoughts. It's, again, and that's also, a controversy, because once you take those out there into the theological world, then you realize that there's minds out there that would rather stick to traditional theoretical thinking as opposed to actual Bible reasoning.
Right. Yeah, I love your passion. You have passion for the spiritual. You have passion for your poetry, but you also have passion for music. Talk about that. How does that go hand in hand, your music?
Yeah. Man, music is like music is that love. Music is that love. And when I started writing poetry at 7, I began to realize that I could just not, in a sort of realistic way, that I could use the words and manipulate the words in a way that they could form sentences of rhyme schemes and rhyme schemes within rhyme schemes to form paragraphs or verses of songs. And so I started writing music, and by my late teens, I kind of stopped because it wasn't alleviating me the correct way. But I recently picked it back up a few years ago, and I actually just released an album, my first album. And the love that is there, the joy that I get from doing, I don't even listen to music. It's so funny. I don't even listen to current music, but I have the foundation of music from what I listened to as a youth, and honing me as a musical artist and as a lyricist. I can now be the original me that I couldn't be in my late teens, and I realized that I wasn't that original me. That's why I stopped. But now I can be that original me, give that original sound, and continue to develop the original sound of the music, of my brand of music, of just me. So music, it's just, I guess that's just me. Like separate this body and this face, and separate this brain, and what is there is an essence of a flowing stream of lighted written music and poetry. That's what I am floating about. If you had to take everything away from me.
Yeah, it's a wonderful segue. Because one of the questions I wrote to you and asked you is like, how important it is for you, for us to be authentic. Why is that so important to be authentic? Because obviously you are authentic. What you talk about, your passions, it's very authentic. Why is it so important?
It's so important because the you that is inside, we're walking around a body, but this body isn't us. So the way I like to explain it, when I talk about life to different people, the way I like to explain it is I ask them this question all the time. Do you ever remember saying, in quotes, I do to life? Like how you stand and you're getting married, the woman says I do, man says I do. Do you ever remember saying I do to life? And then after a period of silence, which always is, I'll say, if you look me in my eyes and tell me that you say you remember saying I do to life, you are a liar. You're a straight liar. Because none of us have a memory of saying I do to life. And the reason being is because there is something within us that chose to house life within us. Life chose to house within this body. There was a level of consciousness that accepted life before our biological frame chose to concur with it. And I like to say that because within us is something that is beyond biological. It is not natural. It is an essence. There is an essence that chose to live, and it chose to live inside the body that you are. You are not this body, And this essence has an intelligence that has to coexist with that body, which is why the mental and the physical aspect of the correlation between health and wellness is so important, because the essence within chose us. It chose us to go through this living experience in. We didn't choose it. The essence within chose what is us. We have to take care of that essence. We have to take care of that mind and that intelligence that chose us, that the living God asked, do you want? And it said yes, and it chose us. It just so happened that an organism formed around it, and it actually gave the lifeblood to the organism that we are. So they're interconnected. So when we take care of that essence, when we take care of our inward person or mind, that means that our body is also going to be taken care of, because we are sharing, we are a host. We are not the host. We are a host. This physical body is a host. It's host to the you, to the essence within. And we have to cultivate that. And that's really it when it comes down to the transition, and when it comes down to being current in your beliefs and not letting go. It's that being, and it's the cultivation of the you, to answer your question.
Wonderful. Well said. Our special guest today, Linwood Jackson Jr. Before we get to the final comments, sir, please tell us where do we go after the show to read about you and look at your wonderful, wonderful books.
You can go to linwoodjacksonjr.com. linwoodjacksonjr.com. You can see me, read up on me. My videos are there. My books are there. You can check out my blog there. Everything related to me and to my work, it's all there. Or you could type my name into Google, and I will pop up, and you could just reach me that way.
I'll say. Okay. Final comment. You've written books. You can write a lot more books. You're sharing with us in the world. You're doing some wonderful things. When it's all said and done, sir, what would you like to be remembered for professionally in closing?
Wow. That is a real question. I would like to be remembered for the impact of my words on the study of the Bible, the legacy left on the philosophical aspect to the words in the Bible, to the philosophical aspect to music, and the philosophical aspect to poetry. The philosophical aspect is really what I would like to leave back as a legacy. And the way that, the impact that I'm seeing, you really don't see that much when you're alive, but the few people that are bold enough to reach out by voice, and then the others that reach out by email, and then the others that will find me, that's really what they see me as, is the legacy I like to leave behind, is to be remembered for the wholeness and the simplicity, yet the complexity behind the use of language and context when it comes to the understanding of well-being from a personal and devotional aspect in relation to the Bible's words.
Linwood Jackson Jr. That's a standing ovation. We love it so much. Powerful message for the weekend. Reflection Friday, because it's September 11th tomorrow. Linwood, thank you so much for coming on and sharing with us today. You have a wonderful weekend. We'll talk to you real soon, sir.
Thank you for having me. Take care, and much love, blessing, and respect.
All right. Bye-bye. What a powerful show. Powerful man, articulate man. I love that. Starting young, continuing with his passion. He's doing some wonderful things. Please follow up. That's linwoodjacksonjr.com. Follow up. Read about his stuff. Read about him. Okay? Again, very impressive young man. Very, very important to, again, be passionate about something. Be authentic. Again, I'm a passionate person. I like the word and the comment passion, but I live passion. That's the way I am. With my son last night, we're talking. We watched the ball game together. Passionate. He makes me passionate. He's my big why. Being around him, trying to talk about what's going on, ups and downs. But if you're passionate, you come through. It'll pull you through. Okay? Because you get some ups and downs, but it'll pull you through. Okay? Again, Linwood Jackson Jr. mindfulness.com. Follow up. Great stuff. Happy Friday, everybody. Reflection Friday today. And your own way tomorrow. Kind of remember September 11th. Close your eyes, think about it. Thankful that we're here in this space. We want to live a lot more years, okay? Have a great weekend, everybody. And as always, I'll see you next time. And come back next week. We'll have a full week on the Hollis Chapman Show on Blog Talk Radio. Thank you so much, everybody.